All right, beautiful people. Top of the day. Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. Sorry for my delay. I had to handle something this morning. I had to push it out about 10 minutes. Robert, what's up, bruh? That's why, boo. That's why, boo. Stand up here real quick. Scratched out my stuff. It's only 9 chapters. Shayla, hey. All right, y'all. Happy Tuesday. It is September the 7th, 2021, day 253 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets, and of the 3-year consecutive day count, day 922. It is also the day after Labor Day, and everybody know what that means here in Virginia. It's the day the kids go back to school, right? But our kids are homeschooled, so it makes no never mind to us, right? Okay. All right, y'all. So today we're finishing up the book of Amos. Amos chapter 8 and 9. I think Amos 9 chapters. And then we're going to read the 1 chapter of Obadiah. Then we're going into Jonah. Right? Okay. Let's see. Let's go ahead and do this Shema. So we'll go ahead and get started. We'll get some more of this boot read day. All right, y'all. So remember the Shema is found in Deuteronomy chapter 6. Remember to read the whole chapter. You should know it by heart by now, right? Okay, I just pulled out the meat potatoes for the Shema. Hear, therefore, O Israel, and observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily, as Yahuwah, the mighty one of our fathers, has promised us in the land that flows with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, Yahuwah, our mighty one, he is one. And you shall love Yahuwah, your mighty one, with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words which I command you this day shall be in your heart. And you shall teach them diligently unto your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them upon the posts of your house and on your gates. And Yahuwah commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear Yahuwah, our mighty one, for our good all ways, that he might preserve us alive as it is at this day. And it shall be our righteousness if we observe to do these commandments before you, who are our mighty one, as he has commanded us. All right, remember, y'all, remember when it says, and you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand. Remember, the hand represents the action, the outward carrying out of those things, right? And then they should be as frontlets between your eyes, those things that you meditate on. And this is most important, right? Because what you meditate on, what you think about, will show up in your actions. So you have to be careful about what you think about, what you meditate on, right? Whether it be good or evil, you want to manifest it here in the flesh, right? So with to keep all Yahuwah's commands, keep to the path of life, teach our children, as well as that should be the going rule for our households and the cities we live. If we are the mayor or the ruler of the city, it should be a righteous city, right? But if you're not the mayor, the governor, or whatever other place, then at least your own household should be walking the paths of life, right? Okay, as simple as that. All right, y'all, so let's hop on over here to Amos chapter 8. Just this on my screen. Bless you too. Hallelujah. Peace and blessings, bruh. Good to see you again. All right, y'all. Divine blessings. Trina, hey, girl, hey. All right. A vision of ripe fruit. Then the sovereign Lord showed me another vision. In it, I saw a basket filled with ripe fruit. What do you see, Amos? He asked. I replied, a basket of ripe fruit. Then Yahuwah said, like this fruit, Israel is ripe for punishment. I will not delay their punishment again. In that day, the singing in the temple will turn to wailing. Dead bodies will be scattered everywhere. They will be carried out of the city in silence. I, the sovereign Lord, have spoken. Listen to this, you who rob the poor and trample down the needy. You can't wait for the Sabbath day to be over and the religious festivals to end so you can get back to cheating the helpless. You measure out grain with dishonest measures and cheat the buyer with dishonest scales, and you mix the grain you sell with chaff swept from the floor. Then you enslave poor people for one piece of silver or a pair of sandals. Now Yahuwah has sworn this oath by his own name, the pride of Israel. I will never forget the wicked things you have done. The earth will tremble for your deeds, and everyone will mourn. The ground will rise like the Nile River at flood time. It will heave up, then sink again. In that day, says the sovereign Lord, I will make the sun go down at noon and darken the earth while it is still day. I will turn your celebrations into times of mourning and your singing into weeping. You will wear funeral clothes and shave your heads to show your sorrow as if your only son had died. How very bitter that day will be. The time is surely coming, says the sovereign Lord. Hold on. The computer jumped again. I'm sorry, y'all. I use this mouse. The time is surely coming, says the sovereign Lord, when I will send a famine on the land, not a famine of bread or water, but of hearing the words of Yahuwah. People will stagger from sea to sea and wander from border to border, searching for the word of Yahuwah, but they will not find it. Beautiful girls and strong men will grow faint in that day, thirsting for Yahuwah's word. And those who swear by the shameful idols of Samaria, who take oaths in the name of the God of Dan and make vows in the name of the God of Beersheba, they will all fall down, never to rise again. Next chapter, Amos chapter 9. A vision of Yahuwah at the altar. Then I saw a vision of Yahuwah standing beside the altar. He said, strike the top of the temple columns so that the foundation will shake, and bring down a roof on the heads of the people below. I will kill with the sword those who survive. No one will escape. Even if they dig down to the place of the dead, I will reach down and pull them up. Even if they climb up into the heavens, I will bring them down. Even if they hide at the very top of Mount Carmel, I will search them out and capture them. Even if they hide at the bottom of the ocean, I will send the sea serpent after them to bite them. Even if their enemies drive them into exile, I will command the sword to kill them there. I am determined to bring disaster upon them and not help them. Yahuwah, the God of heaven's armies, touches the land and it melts, and all its people mourn. The ground rises like the Nile River at flood time, and then it sinks again. Yahuwah's home reaches up to the heavens, while its foundation is on the earth. He draws up water from the oceans and pours it down as rain on the land. Yahuwah is his name. Are you Israelites more important to me than the Ethiopians? Asked Yahuwah. And here is a place where it also says, if you were listening here yesterday about the 1599 Geneva version. Remember, I came in by mistake yesterday. I mentioned about the 1599 Geneva version, but here's also a place where you'll find, if you're looking at right here where it says Ethiopians, it says Black Moors, right? Are you Israelites more important to me than the Black Moor? Asked Yahuwah. I brought Israel out of Egypt, but I also brought the Philistines from Crete and led the Arameans out of Ker. I, the sovereign Lord, am watching the sinful nation of Israel. I will destroy it from the face of the earth, but I will never completely destroy the family of Israel, says Yahuwah. For I will give the command and will shake Israel along with the other nations, as grain is shaken in a sieve, yet not one true kernel will be lost, but all the sinners will die by the sword, and all those who say nothing bad will happen to us. A promise of restoration. In that day, I will restore the fallen house of David. I will repair its damaged walls. From the ruins, I will rebuild it and restore its former glory. And Israel will possess what is left of Eden, and all the nations I have called to be mine. Remember, I said a lot of people just looking like for this land that belongs to Israel, but in the end, Yahuwah said Israel will inherit the lands of Edom, right? Or what's going to be left of Edom. All of Israel will possess what is left of Edom, and all the nations I have called to be mine. Yahuwah has spoken, and he will do these things. The time will come, says Yahuwah, when the grain and grapes will grow faster than they can be harvested. Then the terraced vineyards on the hill will drip with sweet wine. I will bring my exiled people of Israel back from distant lands, and they will rebuild their ruined cities and live in them again. They will plant vineyards and gardens and will eat their crops and drink their wine. I will firmly plant them there in their own land. They will never again be uprooted from the land I have given them. And that is the end of the book of Amos. Now we're going to read the last chapter for the day, which is only one chapter. It's the book of Obadiah. Mom, shalom. Yahusha means Yahuwah is salvation. Shalom. All right, y'all. We are in Obadiah chapter 1, the New Living Translation. Okay, y'all. This is the vision that the sovereign Lord revealed to Obadiah concerning the land of Edom. Edom's judgment announced. We have heard a message from Yahuwah that an ambassador was sent to the nations to say, "Get ready, everyone. Let's assemble our enemies and attack Edom." Yahuwah says to Edom, "I will cut you down to size among the nations. You will be greatly despised. You have deceived by your own pride. You have been deceived by your own pride, because you live in a rock fortress and make your home high in the mountains. Who can ever reach us way up here?" you ask boastfully. But even if you soar as high as eagles and build your nest among the stars, I will bring you crashing down, says Yahuwah. If thieves came in at night and robbed you, what a disaster awaits you. They would not take everything. Those who harvest grapes always leave a few for the poor, but your enemies will wipe you out completely. Every nook and cranny of Eden will be searched and looted. Every treasure will be found and taken. All your allies will turn against you. They will help to chase you from your land. They will promise you peace while plotting to deceive and destroy you. Your trusted friends will set traps for you, and you won't even know about it. At the time, not a single wise person will be left in the whole land of Eden, says Yahuwah. For on the mountains of Edom, for on the mountains of Edom, I will destroy everyone who has understanding. The mightiest warriors of Teman will be terrified, and everyone on the mountains of Edom will be cut down in the slaughter. Reasons for Edom's punishment. Because of the violence you did to your close relatives in Israel, you will be filled with shame and destroyed forever. When they were invaded, you stood aloof, refusing to help them. Foreign invaders carried off their wealth and cast up lots to divide up Jerusalem, but you acted like one of Israel's enemies. You should not have gloated when they exiled your relatives to distant lands. You should not have rejoiced when the people of Judah suffered so much misfortune. You should not have spoken arrogantly in that terrible time of trouble. You should not have plundered the land of Israel when they were suffering such calamity. You should not have gloated over their destruction when they were suffering such calamity. You should not have seized their wealth when they were suffering such calamity. You should not have stood at the crossroads, killing those who tried to escape. You should not have captured the survivors and handed them over in their terrible time of trouble. That's Jacob's trouble, right? Tony Faye, shalom. Edom destroyed, Israel restored. The day is near when I, Yahuwah, will judge all the godless nations. And as you have done to Israel, so it will be done to you. All your evil deeds will fall back on your own heads. Just as you swallowed up my people on my holy mountain, so you and the surrounding nations will swallow the punishment I pour out on you. Yes, all you nations will drink and stagger and disappear from history. But Jerusalem will become a refuge for those who escape. It will be a holy place, and the people of Israel will come back to reclaim their inheritance. The people of Israel will be a raging fire, and Edom a field of dry stubble. The descendants of Joseph will be a flame roaring across the field, devouring everything. There will be no survivors left in Edom. I, Yahuwah, have spoken. Then my people living in the Negev will occupy the mountains of Edom. Those living in the foothills of Judah will possess the Philistine plains and take over the fields of Ephraim and Samaria. And the people of Benjamin will occupy the land of Gilead. The exiles of Israel will return to their land and occupy the Phoenician coast as far north as Zarephath. The captives from Jerusalem, exiled in the north, will return home and resettle the towns of the Negev. Those who have been rescued will go up to Mount Zion in Jerusalem to rule over the mountains of Edom, and Yahuwah himself will be king. And that, my beautiful people, is our reading for today. That was the last two chapters of Amos, 8 and 9, and then the one and only chapter of Obadiah. And tomorrow we start the book of Jonah, which is also a short book. All right, y'all. So let me adjust this. Adjust this sun. Couldn't reach it today. Mow a little bit further. Okay. My handy dandy staff. Okay. So we left off in chapter. We're reading chapter 4, and we stopped at page 82. And don't forget, y'all, we are still looking for the new moon, right? So when it's spotted, she's supposed to be on track to be spotted this evening after the sun goes down. And if she is spotted, that means we're entering into the 7th month. Everybody know what the 7th month is, right? The fall feast begin. And the Feast of Trumpets is the very first day. They're not required to assemble or do anything but blow the trumpets. And although we're not in Zion, it's said to celebrate these feasts wherever we are all across the earth, right? You got a shofar, you got a trumpet. After the new moon is spotted, if she's spotted tonight, and she will only show for a few hours, the max 4, right? You got to be looking for her right when the sun comes down. I forgot to look at what time the sun sets, but go to an app or just Google what time does the sun set today, right? So right when you need to be out there before the sun sets if you're going to be looking for it. But right as the sun is setting, you will see it's like the moon is going to phase in and then it's going to phase right back out. It's pretty cool how it happens every single month. And it's to let you know, hey, this is the last day of the current month. The new month begins, and we'll begin counting the next day, right? And then for some reason, it's weird. The moon kind of disappears for a couple days, or at least, I don't know why this, maybe just, I don't know. But for the first week, we'll see the moon rising and setting with the sun, right? And as the days progress, the moon is going to rise later and later. But for the first half of the month, we're going to see the moon during the daytime in the sky with the sun, right? So in about a week, she'll start, well, in about a week, you'll see her start rising later and later. And as the month goes on, she'll be present for a little bit at night. And then you will see her rising at night. But when she's completely full, you will see her rising, staying present for the entire night. Then she'll fade away in the morning as she's waning out. Towards the end of the month, you will begin to see her stay. She'll rise at later and later at night. So she's rising at midnight, and then you'll see her setting the next day around about 11 or 12. Just kind of follow it. It's pretty cool if you follow it. I'm new to this. When is the Month of Atonement? It is the 7th month. We're about to go into the 7th month. And now I can't make a post here yet. I can't, on the community page, I can't do posts. I think it said I have to have like 1,000 subscribers before I can start doing posts. And so I'm patiently awaiting that so I can start sharing with YouTube some of the things I share on Facebook, so some of the, so it's coming. But when I'm able to do that, I'll make reminders, and I'll be able to post like little graphics and things to kind of help you guys along. So, but yeah, it's the 10th day of the 7th month, but it begins the night before. If you read Leviticus chapter 23, it tells you that atonement, you probably know that already, but you start observing. That's one of the only ones with the exception of Passover. Passover is just an evening event, right? It's not a full day, but Day of Atonement, it spans the course of 2 days, right? The 9th and the 10th. You begin celebrating it sundown on the 9th day, right? Sun goes down, which means it's still the day of the 9th. It's not another whole day. It's not the 10th day until the sun rises, right? And it says that clearly. You begin the Day of Atonement the evening before on the day of the 9th day of the month. So atonement officially begins on the 9th day at sundown, and then it spans over into the 10th day, and it ends at sundown on the 10th day. And that is the day where we are to fast, right? You put away all the foods. If you're having a hard time with it, start cutting your meals that you got about 9 days. Try and shrink it down. You ain't gonna die. It's spanning over 2 days. So if you just having an absolutely terrible time trying to fast, keep at it. You would get it, right? Just don't give up. You got to get this beast under control. This beast called the flesh. Like your spirit is like the avatar trying to control this body. Literally, you got to whip it into shape, right? Don't let your body control you. You control it, right? But the Day of Atonement is not as bad as some people think. You're not going to die. Here's what you can do, right? If you're still struggling with fasting, the day of the 9th, while the sun is still out, go ahead and eat your fill. I ain't saying glut yourself, but you can eat up until sundown. When sundown happens, half the time of the Day of Atonement, you can probably be asleep anyway, right? So you stop eating when the sun goes down. Then when you wake up, you got about 12 more hours, right? You have to last that. And if you're not thinking about food, you'll be all right. Do something to occupy your mind so you're not thinking about food, right? And then you don't eat for the day, right? But when the sun goes down on the 10th day, you can resume your eating, right? Okay, so that's coming up. First day of 7th month is the Feast of Trumpets. We simply just blow the trumpets, So if you hear trumpets being blown, they'll probably start blowing them tonight when they see it, if you see it, but we're diligently to watch, make sure we won't get our days screwed up. Then you'll probably be hearing them all day tomorrow. And then keep on going. 9th day comes at sundown, begins the Day of Atonement. Then on into the 10th day. Then the 15th day of the 7th month begins Sukkot, or the Feast of Booths, also known as the Feast of Tabernacles, also known as the Feast of Shelters, right? Or the Feast of Tents, same thing. You live out in the tent for a week, right? It's to remind us how Yahuwah had us living in tents, right? When he brought us out of Egypt, out of slavery the first time. It's for us to remember that, right? So we normally just kind of do it in our backyard. Some people put together big shindigs and they go to like a camping ground. You can do it however you want to do it. Just set up the tent, go spend some time out there in the tent doing the Feast of Tabernacles, read the scriptures, meditate, pray, shucks, take a nap. Let your kids go play in it. They need to be learning about this stuff too. But all right, keep it simple, people. All right, so that was just a quick update about that. So we will be, if we spot the new moon, it will be the start of the new, well, technically the 10th, the 6th month. If we spot it tonight, that's our indication that this is the last day of this month, and we are to begin the count beginning tomorrow with day 1, right? And so when we count with 7, we come back, we'll realize that the Sabbaths will fall on Tuesday now. Remember the new moons are like this is how I explain it because it helps me to remember it better. The new moons are like the line leaders for the Sabbath. So whatever day we spot the new moon, what we call it for the month, we automatically know that same day for that monthly cycle or that moon cycle, the Sabbaths are going to fall on those same days. So if we spot the new moon on Tuesday, like I'm sure we're going to do tonight, hopefully, but we're going to watch, then all the Sabbaths for this month or this month will fall on Tuesdays. And then when it comes Tuesday, we won't be here because we're observing the Sabbath. All right? Okay. That was my fault. All right, y'all. So back over here. Caesar's Messiah, picking up on page 82. All right. Okay. So let me go back up one paragraph. Remember, he was talking about the differences between Titus and Jesus and how he began to realize that, wait a minute, something was stolen. This is a satire of Titus's campaign, right? Okay. So let me go back up to the paragraph before it. All right. Well, up to the top. This shared understanding is suspicious, and it was talking about the demoniac who had been possessed, right? Is there a calendar? There are different calendars out there, but the calendar I have is the one that I actually, because from my own research and tracking it myself. Now there is one I found a couple other people who do it the same way, which I actually found after I did it, which made me think I wasn't crazy. I'm like, okay, I'm probably tracking this the right way. And one of them is actually an app. Now they're not perfect, but they get pretty close. And the one who gets really close is World's Last Chance Calendar. If you look it up in the App Store, or at least I know on the iPhone, it's WLC. It's like a blue app, almost like this color, maybe a little bit lighter. And it has WLC, which stands for World's Last Chance Calendar. But that app is pretty good. Now, I wouldn't 100% go by it, although you can, because it's almost 100% correct, at least from how I kept. Not saying that I'm like absolutely perfect, got everything right, but I've been doing this for like the last few years and actually manually handwriting and looking and tracking and stuff. But they seem to line up and they label it and they let you know, so you can use it as a good resource and a tool, so you can kind of see, if you go through and you look at the data, you get familiar with the app, it'll probably help you further understand how it's being tracked. I really like it. It's really good, so I ain't saying y'all have to use it, but it's a really good app. It's WLC, World's Last Chance Calendar app. I'm not sure if it's on in the Google Play Store. It may be, but I'm certain it's on in the Apple Store because I have iPhone. So go check it out. But you can look at that. But that's the closest calendar I can tell you of, right? Other than the one that I'm manually doing in my book, marking up for the last 3 years. And the only reason why because I've actually tracked it manually, when I was going back through looking at my data, I began to notice a pattern. You found it? Okay, sweet, Mariah. I began to notice a pattern. I didn't notice that pattern for the first couple of years. I was just kind of marking stuff out, marking my findings, observing. But as I began to go back and I looked at because these are like the weeklies, but if I went back and I looked at the calendar for the whole month view, because I also put it there, I noticed the pattern was emerging for every single month. And that's the pattern that began to emerge. When I saw the new moon and I tracked it and I began to count, and I don't know why I didn't catch it sooner. It wasn't until I just decided to go back and look through my data where I realized this pattern right here that you see was going through every single month. And while I was doing, I'm just tracking, right? Okay, boom, just going about my business. But as I began to look, I began to notice for the last 3 years that was the same pattern. That's why I said I use the terminology. I'm not sure if anybody else use it, but because of my personal research, that's why I call the new moons the line leaders for that monthly cycle, because it always, for the last 3 years or so, and I use the same type of calendar that I purchased from Amazon, it falls the same exact way, so I thought that was really interesting. So when you hear me say the new moons are like the line leaders for the Sabbath, this is what I'm referring to from my own personal research and tracking and stuff. It just falls that way. And it's actually easier to help me remember. So I explain it to you the way it's easy for me to remember. Whatever day the new moon falls on, that's going to be the Sabbath for that moon cycle, right? So if I find out a better way to explain that, I will not share it with you, but that helps me to keep things together in my mind. People may explain it different ways, and I've heard a couple different people explain it a different way, but I'm like, wait, what? But I looked at what they was doing, but it was the same thing. They just explained it different. But I'll let them explain it the way they explain it. I explain it the way I explain it because it's easy for me, and my children understand it. So if they can understand it, I figure I'm cool on the way I explain it for now. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and read this. So that's the calendar, Yahusha. Okay. This shared understanding is suspicious. Jesus could only view the wickedness of this generation by looking into the future, and yet he not only held the same opinion of the generation as Josephus, he used the same words describing it. He's talking about the demoniac and the guy who had the spirits of legion cast out of him, and they went into the pigs and they fell off the cliff. But you're welcome. You're welcome. Returning to the version of the story of the demoniac of Gadara found in Matthew, where Jesus met two demons, in the wars of the Jews, we learn that there are two tyrants or leaders of the Jewish rebellion, John described above and a Simon. Since my analysis suggests that the New Testament is satirizing John in the version that describes a single demon of Gadara, it seems logical to ask whether the version describing two demoniacs was satirizing both leaders of the Jewish rebellion, John and Simon. And here's where we left off. Experimenting with this premise, I noticed that at the conclusion of the siege of Jerusalem and wars of the Jews, Simon and John both take refuge in subterranean caverns beneath Jerusalem. Eventually, they are forced by starvation to come out of these tombs and surrender to the Romans. This event struck me as a parallel to the description of the demon-possessed men coming out of the tombs in the New Testament. And the passage in Wars of the Jews that describes these caverns confirm that they are indeed tombs. Quote, the Romans slew some of them, some they carried captives, and others they made a search for underground, and when they found where they were, they broke up the ground and slew all they met with. There were also found slain there above 2,000 persons, partly by their own hands and partly by one another, but chiefly destroyed by the famine. But then the ill savor of the dead bodies was most offensive to those that lighted upon them, insomuch that some were obliged to get away immediately. End quote. And that's reference 74. You can find where it's actually found in the back. As I have mentioned, the demon-possessed man at Gadara is described as cutting himself with stones. Cutting oneself with stones is, of course, unusual. A stone is not a tool someone would normally use to cut with. What is the author of this passage actually referring to? I realize that if the demoniacs of Gadara are intended to satirize the rebel leaders, then there was a satire answer to this question. The phrase in the New Testament where the demoniac is in the tombs cutting himself with stones shares a darkly humorous relationship with the passage in the Wars of the Jews that describes the tombs that John and Simon take refuge in. The scornful joke comes from the unanswered question in Mark chapter 5, verse 5. This question being, what does one call someone who cuts himself with stones? In the passage in Wars of the Jews relating to the rebel leaders hiding in the tombs, one can see an ironic answer. Someone who cuts himself with stones is stone cut and can therefore mockingly be called a stone cutter. Quote, this Simon, during the siege of Jerusalem, was in the upper city, but when the Roman army was gotten within the walls and were laying the city waste, he then took the most faithful of his friends with him, and among them some that were stone cutters, with those iron tools which belonged to their occupation, end quote. And that's reference 76. The version of Gadara encounter in Matthew does not describe the fate of either of its two demon-possessed men. However, if the demoniacs were spoofs of the leaders of the Jewish rebellion, then the version in Mark, which describes only one possessed man, must tell the fate of John. I reached this conclusion because the passage concludes with the statement, him that was possessed with the devil and had the legion, sitting and clothed and in his right mind, and began to publish in Decapolis how great things Jesus had done for him. End quote. And that's reference number 77. If the New Testament was lampooning Simon and John, the leaders of the Jewish rebellion, then the individual who was restored to his right mind and who went to Decapolis could only have been John. This is because Josephus records that after being captured, John was given life imprisonment while Simon was taken to Rome and executed. Following this logic, it could only have been John then who began to publish in Decapolis. So my musings raised the question of whether John the Zealot, leader of the Jewish rebellion, had assisted the Romans in creating Christian literature while he was in prison in Decapolis. And further, I wondered exactly what literature this individual could have helped the Romans create. The only known Christian literature from this era is the New Testament itself. There was, of course, someone named John who wrote a gospel. While the premise that the Apostle John was a lampoon of the John who was a leader of the rebellion was based at this point in my analysis as much on imagination as evidence, it was consistent with the style of dark humor I felt was in play with the passages analyzed previously. Of course, if the Apostle John is a lampoon of the rebel John, then it will follow that the Apostle Simon is also a lampoon of the other rebel leader, Simon. Since my analysis of the New Testament's Gadara passages suggests that the Sicarii were lampooned as demons in the New Testament, I first attempted to determine if there were other New Testament passages concerning demons that might support the proposition regarding the relationship between Josephus's Messianic rebel leaders, John and Simon, and the two apostles. During this search, I noticed the following passage from the Gospel of John, which states that the apostle Judas was the son of Simon the Iscariot. Quote, "Did I not choose you, the 12, said Jesus, and even one of you is a devil." He alluded to Judas, the son of Simon the Iscariot, for he it was who, though one of the 12, was afterwards to betray him. End quote. John chapter 6, verses 71 through 72. Scholars have commented on the possibility that Iscariot, the last name of Judas, is somehow related to Sicarii, the word Josephus uses to describe the Messianic rebels. Okay. As Robert Eisman notes, the only difference between the two Greek words is the switching of the iota or the I with the sigma or the S. I concur and will show below that it is simply one of the many puns that the authors of Josephus and the New Testament use in challenging the reader to discover that the two works describe the same characters. I determined that the following passage from the Gospel of Matthew could be read as a satire on John, the leader of the rebellion, as well as on the wicked generation. Notice that John is accused of having a demon because he is not eating and drinking, which certainly can be likened to the rebel John's situation in the subterranean caverns. And if you read the New Testament enough, you're familiar with this passage. Oh, you're welcome, Yusha. Okay. John is shown as a mirror opposite of the Son of Man, who is eating and drinking and is the friend of tax gatherers and who will upbraid towns because they had not repented. This description of Jesus having a clear parallel in Titus's activities in Judea. Therefore, if the passage has the satirical meaning, I suspect, then the John described within the passage is meant to be understood as John, the leader of the rebellion, and Jesus's prophecy is actually envisioning Titus's campaign through Judea. Quote, This is from Matthew 11:16-20. But to what shall I compare the present generation? It is like children sitting in the open places who call to their playmates. We have played the flute to you, they say, and you have not danced. We have sung dirges, and you have not beaten your breasts. Remember, a dirge is like a funeral song, right? Okay. We have played the flute to you, they say, and you have not danced. We have sung dirges, and you have not beaten your breasts. For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say he has a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they exclaim, see this man, given to gluttony and tippling, and a friend of tax collectors and notorious sinners, and yet wisdom is vindicated by her actions. Then began he to upbraid the towns where most of his mighty works had been done because they had not repented. And again, that's Matthew 11:16-20. My analysis of the New Testament story of the demons of Gadara suggests that the subterranean caverns the Jewish rebels fled into at the end of the siege of Jerusalem were satirized as tombs within the New Testament. The following passage from the Gospel of John appeared to me to be using this theme. However, notice that if this interpretation is correct, then in the passage, Jesus is actually comparing himself to Titus, and that Titus is the individual sent by God, that is his father Vespasian, to hand out life or judgment to the Jews hidden in the tombs, that is the caverns beneath Jerusalem. Let me read that again. The following passage from the Gospel of John appeared to me to be using this theme. However, notice that if this interpretation is correct, then in the passage, Jesus is actually comparing himself to Titus, and that Titus is the individual sent by God, that is his father Vespasian, to hand out life or to hand out judgment to the Jews hiding in the tombs, that is the caverns beneath Jerusalem. Remember, we just read about these ones who were hiding. They slaughtered each other. The famine, it began to stink and they began to rise, right? They noticed all these dead bodies, and they noticed that either they died of the famine, or they killed themselves, and the ones that they actually caught as they were coming out, they were fleeing because the stench of the dead body was so bad, right? But they even killed them or sent them into exile. So this is what it's talking about. That's what they're calling the tombs. Okay. This interpretation indicates a different origin for the Christian concept of resurrection than that traditionally held. It is not based on the Pharisaic belief that God will return the dead to life, but rather is a satire of the raising of the dead by Titus at the end of the siege. In other words, the gospel's concept of resurrection refers to those Jews found buried within the tombs under Jerusalem at the end of the siege. If this is correct, it is another example of the theme of Jesus seemingly speaking symbolically, but Josephus's history showing an ironically literal meaning to his words. As for the Father, quote, this is found in John chapter 5, 26-30. For as the Father has life in himself, so he has granted the Son also to have life in himself, and has given him authority to execute judgment, because he is the Son of Man, and come forth those who have done good to the resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of judgment. I can do nothing on my own authority. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just, because I seek not my own will, but the will of him who sent me. Again, that's John chapter 5, 26-30. While these interpretations of the passages above are logical, they do not, in and of themselves, provide direct support for the contention that the apostles John and Simon were satires of the leaders of the Jewish rebellion. Further analysis of the New Testament produced more examples of this kind, but nothing that provided the clarity I sought. Finally, I realized what had been staring me in the face the entire time. There is a passage within the New Testament that provides extraordinary support for the premise that the apostles Simon and John were lampoons of the Jewish rebel leaders Simon and John. The Gospel of John concludes with a discussion between Simon Peter and Jesus. Jesus foresees that Simon will be bound and carried where you do not wish to go. Jesus also tells Simon that he will have a martyr's death to glorify God. In the midst of this discussion, the disciple that Jesus loved, clearly meaning the Apostle John, appears. Simon asks Jesus what the fate of John is to be. Jesus replies, "It is my will that he remain." The passage then points out that John is the disciple who is bearing witness to these things and who has written these things, referring to the Gospel of John itself. Below is the entire passage. Notice how the author goes to great lengths to avoid calling the apostles by their real names, Simon and John. Quote, and this is coming from John chapter 21, verses 18 and 24. We're going to read the whole section. "Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you girded yourself and walked where you would. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will gird you and carry you where you do not wish to go." This he said to show by what death he was to glorify God. And after this he said to him, "Follow me." Peter turned and saw following them the disciple whom Jesus loved, who had lain close to his breast at the supper and had said, "Lord, who is it that is going to betray you?" When Peter saw him, he said to Jesus, "Lord, what about this man?" Jesus said to him, "If it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? Follow me." The saying spread abroad among the brethren that this disciple was not to die. Yet Jesus did not say to him that he was not to die, but if it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? This is a disciple who was bearing witness to these things and who has written these things, and we know that his testimony is true. End quote. And it's John 21, 18 through 24. This passage, which is the conclusion to Jesus' ministry, is exactly parallel to Titus's judgments concerning the rebel leaders, Simon and John, at the conclusion of his campaign through Judea. Thus, at the conclusion of the gospel above, Jesus tells Simon, "When you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will gird you and carry you where you do not wish to go." Jesus tells Simon to follow me, and that his death will glorify God. However, Jesus also states that it is his will that John is to remain. At the conclusion of his campaign through Judea, Titus, after capturing Simon, girds him in bonds and sends him where you do not wish to go, this being Rome. During the parade of the conquest at Rome, Simon follows, that is led to a death to glorify God. The God glorified being Titus's father, the deist Vespasian. However, it is Titus's will to spare the other leader of the rebellion, John. Notice that in the following passage, Josephus records Simon's fate before John's, just as it occurs in John 21. A seemingly innocuous detail, but one that will show has great significance. And remember, y'all, if y'all forgot, remember when the New Testament was written, it was written along with the Wars of the Jews and a few of the other manuals that the Josephus and the Piso family was creating. All of this was literature. It was a satire literature that was meant to be read along with some of the actual history that had happened. It was like a comedy show for them, right? Because all of those who were present at Titus's campaign knew of everything that Titus had done. So when they gave them the Gospels, they don't do that. Pull that out. Back up. Thank you. They would have automatically already known that this was a satire of Titus's campaign and what was happening. Aliyah said, the New Testament is a copycat of our ancient prophets book. You're right. Simon is clearly Simona or Simeon, son of Jacob. They make Judah the scapegoat as if we're traitors, and clearly salvation is of Judah. You're right. That's what the Most High says to the prophet. Jeremiah, before times, comes and destroys the southern kingdom of Israel. You're right. Okay. Notice that in the following passage, Josephus records Simon's fate before John's, just as it occurs in John 21. A seemingly innocuous detail, but one that would show great significance. Simon was forced to surrender himself, as we shall relate hereafter, so he was reserved for the triumph and to be slain, as was John condemned to perpetual imprisonment. And you can find that reference in the back. It's reference 78. And to give you the full reference where that's found at in the book. Wars of the Jews. Okay. Josephus also records that Jesus' vision of Simon following also comes to pass for the rebel leader Simon. Simon, quote, Simon had then been led in this triumph among the captives. A rope had also been put upon his head, and he had been drawn into a proper place in the forum, end quote. And that's reference 79. In the passage from the Gospel of John above, notice that the author does not call the Apostle John by his name, but rather as the disciple whom Jesus loved, and as the individual who had said at the Last Supper, Lord, who is it that is going to betray you? Later in the chapter, the author identifies this disciple with yet another epithet when he states, this is the disciple who testifies of these things and wrote these things, even here, not referring to John by name, but requiring the reader to determine it by knowing the name of the author of the gospel. The author's use of epithets here, instead of simply referring to the disciple as John, seems clearly an attempt to keep the parallel conclusion of Jesus and Titus's ministry from being too easily seen. The author also has Jesus call Simon by his nickname Peter for the same reason. The same technique is used throughout the New Testament and Wars of the Jews. To learn the name of an unnamed character, the reader must be able to recall details from another related passage. In effect, the New Testament is designed as a sort of intelligence test whose true meaning can be understood only by those possessing sufficient memory, logic, and irreverent humor, right? Which is something we've been doing as we read. Remember, I say, remember this, guys. Take this along with us as we go. We have to remember this when we get to certain places so we can understand exactly what's being said and what's not being said and what's possibly missing, right? And who's being made a fool of. Listen, let me read this again. The same technique is used throughout the New Testament and Wars of the Jews. To learn the name of an unnamed character, the reader must be able to recall details from another related passage. In effect, the New Testament is designed as a sort of intelligence test whose true meaning can be understood only by those possessing sufficient memory, logic, and irreverent humor. For clarification, I present the following list showing the parallels between the end of Jesus' ministry and Titus's campaign. 1. Characters are named Simon and John. 2. Both sets of characters are judged. 3. The sides of the parallel occur at the conclusion of a campaign. 4. Jesus predicts and Titus fulfills Simon going to a martyr's death after being placed in bonds and taken someplace he does not wish to go. 5. In each, John is spared. 6. In each, Simon follows. Further, the two events continue the theme of a prophecy made in one work being fulfilled in another. In other words, what Jesus predicts, Josephus records as having come to pass. This group of parallels seems too complex to have occurred by chance and provides direct support for my premise that the apostles Simon and John were lampoons of the leaders of the Jewish rebellion, as well as my suspicion that the Son of Man, whose coming the New Testament predicts will bring destruction to Jerusalem, is Titus. If this was the case, however, one thing seemed strange to me. Why had Josephus not recorded a parallel to the most central event in the ministry of Jesus, his crucifixion? There seemed to be no parallel to the event in the wars of the Jews. Armed with the understanding that the campaigns of Jesus and Titus occurred in the same sequence, however, I began to analyze Josephus's other works to see if any of them contained a crucifixion parallel. Oh, look, y'all, this has nothing to do with this at all. But his last word, parallel. There's actually a movie on Amazon Prime called Parallel. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but me and my husband was trying to find something to watch yesterday, and we came across that, and we decided to watch it. If you ain't watch it, go watch it. That's all I'm gonna say. It's called Parallel. I discovered matter of fact, it'd be good to go watch it, right? It's talking about parallel universes, right? Which is what we're kind of talking about here, how how the New Testament is paralleling, and actually a satire of what actually happened with Titus's campaign. It'll be something good to watch. You'll get the principle that I'm trying to show you if you go watch it, but it's really good. Okay. I discovered the crucifixion parallel in Josephus's biography, The Life of Flavius Josephus. That's the name of one of his books, The Life of Flavius Josephus. The author of the works of Josephus understood that if the crucifixion parallel had been placed next to the story of the human Passover lamb, the combination would have made their relationship to the gospel story too transparent. He therefore placed it in another section of the work. To establish its place in the overall sequence, however, the author provided the necessary details to place the event between the human Passover lamb and the condemnation of Simon and the sparing of John. Below is the incredible parallel. Quote, moreover, when the city Jerusalem was taken by force, I was sent to Titus Caesar to a certain village called Thekoa in order to know whether it were a place fit for a camp. As I came back, I saw many captives crucified and remembered 3 of them as my former acquaintance. I was very sorry at this in my mind and went with tears in my eyes to Titus and told him of them. So he immediately commanded them to be taken down and to have the greatest care taken of them in order to their recovery. Hold on. Let me read the sentence again. I was very sorry at this in my mind and went with tears in my eyes to Titus and told him of them. So he immediately commanded them to be taken down and to have the greatest care taken of them in order to their recovery. Yet 2 of them died under the physician's hand while the 3rd recovered. End quote. And that's found in the Life of Flavius Josephus, 75, 417, and 422, 421. And if you're at all familiar with the gospel stories, you would know what this particular portion is talking about specifically, right? There is no denying that. There will be a more complete explanation of the relationship between the passage and the gospel's crucifixion story below. But at this point, it is enough to recognize that not only does Josephus' passage mirror the gospels by depicting 3 men being crucified and 1 who miraculously survives, but that the name of the good counselor who begs the Roman commander to take the survivor down from the cross is Joseph. In fact, the name of the gospel's good counselor, Joseph of Arimathea, is obviously a play on words of Titus's good counselor, Josephus's real name, Joseph Bar Matthias. Studying these parallels, I realized that there was a larger implication to what I had discovered. The reader will recall the parallel beginnings to the ministries of Titus and Jesus. That is, both were followed by fishers of men. The conclusions of Titus and Jesus' stints in Judea. Stop it, Isaiah. Hey, get out of there. Because I told y'all we locking them up today. We need to get serious about the schoolwork. Close that up. I let y'all play and have y'all holiday. So go on out of here. Listen, I don't care that you don't like schoolwork. It's required of you, son. Get out of this kitchen before I pluck you. They get mad. They give them a little bit of free time, and they think it's free time forever. Now it's time to get back to business. Start on some schoolwork. I don't like schoolwork. I hate schoolwork. Let us go outside and skateboard. Kids, boy. Hold on. The reader will recall the parallel beginnings to the ministries of Titus and Jesus. That is, both were followed by fishers of men. The conclusions of Titus and Jesus' stints in Judea are also conceptually parallel. When I look at the relative placements of the Gadara and the son of Mary, whose flesh was eaten, when I looked at the relative placements of Gadara and the son of Mary, whose flesh was eaten, and the three crucified, one survived parallels, I found that those two occurred in the same sequence. Thus, the New Testament satires of events from Wars of the Jews were not haphazardly sequenced as I had originally assumed, but were placed in the same sequence as the events they satirized. In other words, the entire outline of Jesus' ministry, as recorded within the New Testament, was designed as a typological prophecy of Titus's campaign through Judea. And we're going to pause right here. We'll probably read this last paragraph again tomorrow, but then it's going into this chart and it's going to show you how they parallel, right? There is no doubt about this, that all of this was very well craftily put together. All right, y'all. Hold on. Can you end it? If I end it by the time the baby get down here, because you know she was so fit. Hold on, I ain't about to end it yet, boy. Slow down. Okay, y'all. So I hope y'all enjoyed the reading for today. Y'all, it is Tuesday, September the 7th, 2021, day 253 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets of the 3-year consecutive day count, day 922. We read the last two chapters of Amos, chapter 8 and 9. Then we read the whole book of Obadiah, which was only one chapter anyway. Then we came on over here to Caesar's Messiah, and we read pages chapter 82 through 90, which is still in chapter 4. I told you chapter 4 was a long chapter. And I'm not even sure that we're going to finish it tomorrow. Hold on. Yeah, we may not finish it tomorrow. Well, we may. All right. It ends on page 103. We're only on page 90. We might. We'll push for it. I'll try and keep my stories to a minimum. All right. My extracurricular stories. All right, y'all. So with that being said, let's go ahead and let's do the blessing so we can get up out of here. I know people got to go to work. We got to get our day started. Get these kids on the road. Uncle Nathaniel, Alicia, y'all, shalom, shalom. I know I seen y'all come in a while ago. Hold on. Here's my blessing. Where'd it go? Okay. All right, y'all. Remember the blessing is found in Numbers chapter 6, verses 22 through 27. Remember the first 21 verses tells us about the Nazirite vow. And the man or woman can take it, right? Gives you all the details of it. You can't go near a dead body. You got to abstain from alcohol. You can't cut your hair during this period of time. No grapes. Nothing from the grapevine. Wet, juicy, or dry, right? No raisins. Raisins are dried grapes. No raisins. No wine, no kind of hard liquor. I mean, no liquor at all. Liquor, wine, anything that can intoxicate you are to abstain from it completely for whatever period of time that you set. That's a vow you set for yourself, right? Yahuwah doesn't give a timeline. He said, this is one I'll let you choose. So if you decide to be a Nazarite for a year, you can be a Nazarite for a year. It's not a vow that should be taken lightly. You should actually study up on it real good and read about what Yahuwah does with Nazarite. They do some amazing things, right? But even if you never do anything notable, just know that you are set aside during that period of time and your life will be more blessed. You can look at your life during the time you're a Nazarite versus the other times where you have not taken a vow, and you will personally see the growth that you have and the blessings that come to you during this period of time that you set yourself apart to be holy unto him, right? You got a clear mind, not being intoxicated by anything. When you're not being intoxicated with liquor or alcohol, you're completely set apart. He can pour his wine into you, right? Oh, and it's so good. Let the spirit of Yah intoxicate you with the wisdom and the revelation that he gives you for things that not only save you, but it help enlighten your family and all those who come across your path, right? Y'all got to consider it. Don't take it lightly and keep your vow. Don't ever make a vow to Yah and don't keep it, right? He'll give you a little more grace than what other people will, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. You don't be swift to talk out the side of your mouth and promise something that you don't keep, right? You just don't want to get in the habit of doing that. All right, with that being said, the blessing begins at verse 22. Oh, you can't cut your hair either, right? It said, don't put scissors to your hair, right? Why? Because you wear your consecration on your head. He said, so don't let scissors touch it during the time of this vow because your hair is set apart for me, right? Okay. And if you violate your vow by mistake or on purpose, you got to cut it off, right? And you got to start it over. So say you made a 7-year vow. You were 5 years into your vow and you violated your vow either on purpose or by mistake. We're required to start all over. In those 5 years, cut the hair off, start over. And those 5 years that we put in work, he say no longer counts, right? And you got to start it all over, right? But if that's a problem for you, you probably shouldn't be taking the vow anyway. Because I went through thinking about all of those things, right? I'm like, okay, you know what? It would be an honor to spend more time set apart to you if that ever did happen. Not thinking or praying that it would, because I prayed that it wouldn't, but things happen, right? My grandmother passed away and I touched her dead body, right? Which violated my vow. And not consciously on purpose, right? I touched her, right? But I knew that by doing this, my previous years of my vow, and I took a long vow, that none of those would count. I understood that. And none of that mattered to me because it's a blessing and an honor for me to set myself aside for you for an even longer period of time, right? So you got to think about all those things, y'all. That's why I say, don't take it lightly. And I pray don't nobody else pass because I did a long vow. I want to finish it out and but seriously guys, it's not anything that should be taken lightly. You really have to think about all these things. Think about the current state of your family. There's different things, who's listening, who's not taking care of their body, who is, like, all these things. You got to think about it and then decide whether you're going to take this vow. And if you do, if something should happen, are you willing to start all over? If the answer is yes, no doubt, then maybe the vow is for you. It's not for everybody, but everybody should at least consider it. Everybody, in my understanding, everybody should. I know everybody can't. But like people who work in the medical field, some may want to take it, but they can't take a long vow because, especially if you're on the medical field where you deal with a lot of people that may possibly die while you're working your shift, right? And you're required to do CPR and all that stuff. You got to call time of death. Hey, your vow has just been broken. So all of these things have to be considered when taking a vow and setting yourself apart for Yah. You may not be able to do that, but you can set yourself aside in other ways. And you can fast, right? You can fast. You can fast with days off or whatever. There's ways to set yourself apart. All right. Let's do this blessing, y'all. Numbers chapter 6, verse 22. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto Aaron and unto his sons, saying, on this wise ye shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, Yahuwah will kneel before us, presenting gifts, and will guard us with a hedge of protection. Yahuwah will illuminate the wholeness of his being towards us, bringing order, and he will provide us with love, sustenance, and friendship. Yahuwah will lift up his wholeness of being and look upon us, and he will set in place all we need to be whole and complete. And they shall put my name, whose name? Yahuwah's name. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. And if y'all not familiar with that portion of scripture, which is the more accurate rendering of Numbers chapter 6, verses 22 through 27, this is probably what you're used to hearing. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron and unto his son, saying, On this wise ye shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, Yahuwah bless us and keep us. Yahuwah make his face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us. Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon us and give us peace. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. All right, beautiful people. Josiah right here, he want to end the video. Tootie baby has still not come down the stairs, which leads me to believe she might still be asleep. Yeah, ain't he? So, wait, boy, Dave, let me just say bye. He just like his sister. Okay, with that being said, beautiful people, be watching out for the new moon tonight. Remember, as the sun is about to go down, go check it. Like I said, I didn't check to see what time the sun was going down, but you want to be watching about that time. You know, sometimes news channels, or at least I know here, but I'm going to check and see. Sometimes news channels will show sunsets, right? And there was one that I got January of this year where they captured the new moon coming. It was so beautiful. The skies was so clear. And I just happened upon the video by mistake. They were just showing the sunset and the horizon and stuff, but during that period of time in court, the most beautifulest coming in and going out of the new moon that I've ever seen in my life. I'm trying to find it again. I shared it last time I talked about it. The video was like, I think the video is like almost 4 hours long. It's literally just showing the sunset. And you can just kind of go through the video and you will see the new moon just so you can see what it does. I'm definitely going to share. If you get a chance to watch it, I'll share the link in both places. So you look at how it's going to phase in and it's going to phase right back out. So that's why you have to be watching for her. All right. So let's see. Share. Video of January. New moon. All right, so that way you can be familiar with what you're looking for. You're going to always be looking in the west where the sun sets, right? Josiah James Murphy. Listen, boy, I did that. Get here, I'm sorry. All right, so that being said, let me go ahead and have him in this video. Love y'all. Be looking for the link. I see y'all tomorrow, 7:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Go ahead, hit finish. Okay. Now, for YouTube, you got to hit in stream. And you have to, oh, there she go. Tune in.